Namaste, yogis. Welcome to the Happy Jack Yoga Podcast. I'm Happy Jack, coming at you live from Cambridge, Massachusetts, USA. And I'm live here with
Happy Hannah, and I'm at the Happy Jack Yoga headquarters in Bracebridge, Canada.
And it's nostalgic in the way, because this is the end of an era. For those who are here live with us in Zoom can see I'm sitting in an empty room. There is nothing in this space. Hannah's going to be driving to Boston tomorrow, hanging out for a couple of days while I do some exams, and then moving my stuff back to Muskoka, back to the headquarters. So this is the last podcast from this apartment, and it's kind of cool that it all kicked off from here. But the good thing is the conversation continues, the podcast continues, and just really excited to be here. So for those who are here live in the Zoom room, love seeing your face and the halos above your head and everything going on in your lives. Those listening on podcasts, Spotify, Apple, all that good stuff, thank you for listening. And those who are part of our Patreon community, thank you for being a part of that at patreon.com/Happy Jack Yoga. And it's really cool. For the price of a cup of coffee, you get to join, be a part of the Patreon community, get to access to some cool content and support what we're up to here. So we got some opening conversations that I'm excited to dive into and get into conversation with you, Hannah. And one of the things, I feel like I had to make a really hard decision this past week. It was really hard for me. And it was saying no. I had to say no. And it was so hard. And because for the Toronto Yoga Conference, so this is a conference that we have had a booth at for several years. This is a conference that you and I both, Hannah, have taught yoga at. We've had team members on our behalf teach at. It's been a big part of what we've done. And so the invite came. And sometimes, we have to evaluate our priorities and where we're going to put our energy and our effort and our time. And so even though I knew it was the right decision to politely decline, attending and teaching there this year, it was so hard because for so many years as a newer yoga teacher, I put that like on a pedestal. It was like, there was a few things that I did, and I don't know if others have done it, or you have things that you put on a pedestal. But for me, I put like becoming an ambassador for Lululemon. Like somehow, if I had made that happen, then I made it as a yoga teacher. Or when I got to teach at Wanderlust Yoga Festival, then I feel like then I've made it. And Toronto Yoga Conference was a big one, because some of those other ones happened quicker. Like, for example, Helsinki, we got our friend Saga in the house, other friends from Finland. That one, it happened relatively easy, maybe because I'm an international, right? So it was like easier to get in the door there. But in Toronto, it was not easy because they draw on all the yoga teachers from around the globe. Anyway, point being, it took a lot of effort to get in. We've now done it for a few years, and now getting the invite to return and having to say no, I just noticed that it was tough. It was probably a little bit of that FOMO, that fear of missing out. But we really have to evaluate how we spend our time, and transparently, as yoga teachers, we have to be mindful of expenses. When we went earlier this year, right, Hannah, I'll share it openly with all of us. Like, it cost about $6,000 between hotel rooms and flights and travel and marketing materials and booth rentals and team meals. And, you start adding all of that kind of stuff up. And it's like, okay, so we invested $6,000. And then what was the return we got out of that? And it didn't equal that. It was actually quite a bit less. And times have changed, right? We're doing so much more online now. We have our community who's here with us live. We got 13 yogis around the world, different parts of Europe, different parts of North America, all around. And I guess this seems to be the new medium. This is the great way for us to connect. And we were even talking about it on last week's Business of Yoga call. So for those who are members of Happy Jack Yoga University, every Thursday, 11 a.m. Eastern, we have a mastermind, a business Q&A call. And just this past week, we were talking with Deanna from West, and about how things have changed. Like, it's so much easier to get started as a yoga teacher now, or to get a small yoga business started. You can do so much for free, like with very little resources. So anyways, that's just some thoughts going on around that. I don't know, Hanna, if you have anything to add, but it was just, I guess it was just like energetically, it was like hard it was like, just like, I don't know, just hard to let go of.
Well,
Um,
it's also because it was a goal. Like you say, you put it on a pedestal, but I would like define it more like a goal that you had,
yeah,
and you worked really hard to get there many years, and there were times where they said no, right? And now to be in that position to say no on our end is a bit, I don't know, maybe strange and sad,
mhm.
right? So it's understandable. And yeah, it's also amazing to be part of those events, right? The energy, the people we meet, like it is fantastic. So, we can't do everything.
Right, right, and that's true. And we got to evaluate what are the things, because we did enjoy it. Like it was
Mhm.
so much fun. Like I remember I loved leading the workshops. We had members of this community who came to the workshops. It was amazing. It was so much fun. It just didn't make business sense. It just didn't. It just wasn't. It really just didn't make sense. And now, if we think about the retreat that we do now in the summer in Canada, in Muskoka, that was also a way to bring people together, to be together in person. It also was like through the roof amazing. I see our friend Sue right in the top, is here with us, and as well as many others. And like we had that same type of experience, and it made more sense because it was
Yeah,
in our hometown for a number of reasons. It made sense.
it made sense. And it's also more intense. It's even more fun than the yoga festival because we get to be together so much. Whereas in the festival, they're still like, their schedule. Whereas on the retreat, it's like summer camp for adults for days on end. And yeah, it's beautiful.
Yeah, and it's
Yeah.
it's a great distinction that you make, that it was a goal more versus
Mm.
like putting it on a pedestal. And as well, I love that Elizabeth says, yeah, summer camp for adults. Love that. As I was thinking about other goals that I've had, and some, some goals I have achieved, and there's some that I haven't. And I thought of a couple goals that I had that I fell short of, that I wanted to share. One of them, as I was transitioning from my corporate career at John Deere into becoming a full-time yogi, in those last few years at John Deere, I was pursuing the path to become a professional engineer. Right. So, when you graduate from university in Canada, you get this iron ring, you get the degree, the certificate. But in order to become a professional, you need to get a certain amount of years of work experience and really demonstrate a bunch of things. And I was working towards that, and I really wanted it. I had a strong attachment, like coming back to the yogic principles. I had a deep desire. I was really attached to it, and I didn't make it. I fell short. You could think of it as like the Yoga Alliance accreditations, a little bit harder, I guess, to meet the requirements. But that was something that at the time it was like the most important thing. There was a period of time where it was like the most important thing. And truthfully, it was an ego thing, because I knew that I was leaving the engineering world and I was going into the yoga world, but somehow I felt like my identity, or like some safety security, it's like, hey, if I get this professional engineering designation, I'll always have that, or whatever, even though I'm off becoming a yogi. And so that was one thing that I really wanted that didn't happen. And another one, yeah, go ahead.
Yeah, I wanted to just understand, like, what do you mean? Like, you were an engineer, you were working many years, but what was it that you fell short on? Like, I don't understand.
So basically, it's just details here, but so as soon as you graduate from university as an engineer, you can work as an engineer. But if you want to, basically, you get a stamp. Like you get a stamp of being, hey, I'm a professional. I could have signed people's passport applications. Do you know what I mean? Like you kind of it just becomes accredited somehow. It as a
And so how much did you fall short, if we use that terminology? Like, were you almost there, or would that be like a lifetime dedication, or what would that mean? Just to understand.
Yeah, well, truthfully, it was just that I went off track. So because even within my career at John Deere, I was there for 10 years, but I didn't spend 10 years doing engineering. If I did 10 years of engineering, check the box, I would have got that long time ago. But I think because I'm ambitious and I'm always kind of seeking the next step, I got into design engineering and then test engineering and then machine evaluation and then product support and customer support, and then towards sales, because I was always, looking for that next step, seeking. So I guess I veered away from engineering. And so that's why I didn't meet it.
And that makes sense. Okay.
Yeah. So anyways, hopefully I feel like in a way we're getting a little off track for yoga, but I hope to like kind of bring it back. It's like just that attachment that we have as humans. And this is one thing that yoga teaches us, right? And it doesn't mean that we, our ego is gone forever. Mine's still absolutely there. It doesn't mean that our attachment, we no longer have attachments, but somehow there's just like an awareness, and we kind of like we can work with it in a healthy way.
Like, I would say, like, to have the right relationship with attachments would be a yogic aspiration, right? Like, we need attachment. Like, we're hardwired for attachments from the moment we were born. We need an attachment figure to survive, and that programs us for being group animals, right? And then within that system, we need attachments to be able to navigate the world and each other. But the healthy relationship to those attachments might be also a way to understand attachment in yoga and what they talk about in yoga philosophy.
Yeah. Yeah. And I guess it just has me thinking now. It just makes me aware. It's like, okay, well, this is how I acted in the past. This is the way that I operated. This is the way that I saw the world. So now I can see these things happening again. I've shared it on the past couple episodes of thinking like, oh, what is the next step? What is the goal? What is the, is it the PhD? Is it because I mentioned a goal. I didn't want to go too deep into things, but I actually have a few goals that I fell short on. And then I've also got a list of a few goals that I did achieve. And so I do feel for the most part, like when I do set a goal for myself, I tend to be able to achieve it. And so, but I want to make sure I'm doing the right thing. And at the same time, though, all the decisions I made, even if they weren't, they weren't long term, I don't have any regrets around, because there was always a learning, there was always a growth. It always kind of made sense in hindsight. But at the same time, I want to get better at walking in the path that's authentic for me. Kind of more initially versus, try this, try that, but like really listening inside, what is the right next step? And I feel like yoga tends to awaken that and bring awareness to that. So that's what I'm looking for.
Yeah,
Yes.
I love that. It makes me think about something that happened to me in Italy in one of the abbeys, basically in a tomb. You know how in the Catholic system they keep relics and they make tombs inside the church. And it was really, really beautiful and almost like a really deep spiritual moment. And I remember seeing a prayer in the tomb saying, I didn't have time to read the whole prayer, but the three last lines were basically saying, as a prayer, like, help me. And then you can put in, help me with the grace. And then you put in whatever it is you would want to grace to be. And then it said to be it at the level so it merits God's bliss and glory. So with that, I thought to myself that it means that whatever it is that I aspire for, that I would pray for it to be at the level of God, that it would, God meaning higher power, the highest good, the most right path that is of benefit for the most amount of people, anyone I interact with, right? And so to know what that is not a linear path. It's not so easy to say. And sometimes it might need some detours, and it might look like a detour in the beginning, but it's like what you said, Jack, without regret, because this step leads to the next, and something else will kind of appear or reveal itself to you as you do the soul searching, and also like to be available for what life presents us with, the energy, the opportunities that kind of like almost without our merit, they come into our lap. Like your inquiry around doing a PhD or not is something that kind of was proposed to you. And then you're evaluating, do I want to get attached to this project or some other project? And so you're in the navigation of it right now. And then you could say the prayer that let this, whatever choice I make, be for the highest good, to say it in yogic terms.
Right? I
Right?
like that. I like that. Yeah. Yeah. So not for myself, for the highest good. And you talked about like things coming into our lives or opportunities. And sometimes it's people, there's different people who are in our lives. And I know, as you know, Hannah, and we joke about, so something I've worked on, for years is letting go of, criticism and judgment. And also the other thing that I'm aware of is there's a lot of people that I really look up to. There's a lot of, I really do. And I noticed, being here at school this past year and a half, there's a couple of individuals that I was really looking up to. And actually then it got shooken just these past couple of weeks. Not in like a bad way, but for example, of course I won't mention names, but I have a friend and I've really looked to him. We were in the same course, the Krishna in Christ course and Sanskrit. So we would walk across campus 15 minutes every day and just get to talk about stuff. And he's super wise, he's younger than me, but like super wise, and just got so much out of our conversations together. And truthfully, this past week, it's almost like well, anyway, I'll just get straight to the point. He was sharing with me that, he does a lot of psychedelics and mushrooms and LSD and ecstasy and all this kind of stuff. And I was like, oh, interesting. Okay. And so then like some things started clicking. It's like, okay, now I see why you were saying that. And I'm doing my best not to judge that, because, I've done a lot of foolish things, and I'm not even saying, straight out, those are foolish. Maybe there's some people in the yoga community that do some of those things. But I noticed that when I learned that, I don't want to, it sounds harsh to say I wrote him off, but in a way maybe I brought him off of the pedestal, and maybe in a good way. It's like, okay, you're human as well. So instead of like, thinking like everything you say is the truth, and I'm like listening to you of like, tell me what to do, friend. It's like, okay, so he has a lot of wisdom to share, which I really appreciate. And there's some things that he believes or he practices that don't resonate with me personally. And again, I'm not here to judge those, but I noticed, and it interestingly, you wanted to add something on that?
Yeah, I just want to say that like I also don't do any aids of that kind, but there's a lot of that in spirituality, even in the past. Like they say that yogis, the ones who have basically downloaded this philosophy, also did all kinds of things in the past. So sometimes when I learned about that, I also felt like a little bit discouraged and saying like, what, some drug heads wrote all this thing, or birthed all these teachings. Or if you look to Central and South America, they do a lot of plant medicine that alters your consciousness. And a lot of big teachers like Ram Dass, like we know he got kicked out of Harvard because of LSD. And now we know that there's a lot of research is being done, and there's a lot of good that comes out of using psychedelics for all kinds of things and microdosing. So again, also, I'm not judging, but sometimes like in learning that, it can be a little bit surprising. And then maybe to trust that the wisdom is still valuable and real and true, even if it comes from using that type of substances or that type of filter. So it is like a kind of like a difficult field to navigate, maybe for some of us who are not used to the idea of using plants and assisted drugs for awakening or for spirituality. But again, not to say that it's not valid, but it can be a little bit like, okay, so, or remember when Jack, you and I went, Dr. Harsh brought us into a cave in India, in the Himalayas, to see a yogi who only sits in the cave. And when we learned this, he's smoking whatever he smoked. For me, that was kind of
Marijuana. Yeah.
yeah, like it did seem to like it didn't. I didn't know what to think about that. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah, yeah, exactly. And it's like, and everybody, yeah, I guess for me, I seek to, at this stage of life, I seek to do it kind of naturally. And I suppose all of those things, serve some purpose. And I'm in no position to judge others because I've made lots of different detours in my life. But at this stage, yeah, kind of really seeking to do it naturally. And again, like not, I feel like I feel really good because I feel like I'm not judging the guy, but rather I'm just like, okay, I'm becoming more aware of like who will I look to for guidance or for wisdom. And because interestingly, I had another friend, friend number two, anonymously, this past week who have also have had such great conversations with, and he's just so wise, and he's like feels like he can answer all the questions that I've had, and it's been great. And I know for him, he has made a lifelong commitment. This is something he has done. Part of his practice. He's made a lifelong commitment of a few different lifestyle things, and outwardly, that's how he presents himself. And then I found out he does indulge in caffeine and eggs. And I know those are not the worst thing. Probably most people on this call indulge in caffeine and eggs, right? So I've done that in recent years. But it was something about the fact, like knowing that, outwardly presenting himself as not doing these things, but then disclosing in confidentiality that he does do those things. And so again, it's not like a judgment because again, like none of us are perfect, but it's just like, okay, well, I guess understanding the human condition and then thinking about like, who will I look to as like the greatest role model or greatest, because there's people who can be friends and none of us are perfect. And then there's other people who can be like really role models. It's like, wow, this person seems to have relinquished their ego. Like they really don't seem to have it. I think of this one individual who's a monk from Pune, India, who I've got to meet a couple of times. And like, I can't find, not that I like put him in the guru level or something like that, and not some enlightened being, but it's like this person really seems pure and really genuine. And it's like, okay, well, this is someone, and I still don't know for sure because they're human, but from what I can tell, like this is someone I'm gonna listen to and learn from, and have some faith in. And yeah, I guess it's just this inquiry I've been in.
But yeah, and that's interesting. And so would you say when like the hesitation then that comes to you, is it because this individual is projecting a certain image into the world, and then in his private life he does other, like does that feel like he's out of integrity, or what's the impact of that for you?
Yeah, that's exactly it. It feels like out of integrity. I
Yeah.
get, but again, I mean, I'm sure all of us probably have some things that we do that we don't outwardly share, disclose our deepest, darkest secrets. But I guess for me, I didn't see this as like some deep, dark secret. It's
Mhm.
like really not that bad of a thing at all. I guess and I'm not saying I'm good or I'm right or I got it figured out. I'm just like in this practice of like really, what I say and what I do being aligned,
Yeah.
and not even so much for what other people think, right? But it's just like for myself. Like
Mhm.
I don't want to say one thing and do another. And yet I do it regularly because we're human. But I guess I'm just working so hard at that. It
Yeah.
just caught me off guard.
Yeah. Interesting.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So anyways, this is the kind of inquiry. We get to be in as yogis and really practice, non-judgment and non-criticism, because there's all different people, and we find this practice at different stages. And I was sharing with Hanna, you were excited to hear a little bit more. This past Friday, I taught a yoga class at MIT, with some students there. And I was hoping with our community that I was going to get this going and recorded. And it was just
Or
so
have us
sporadic.
join live
To
there
have you
would have been fun.
exactly to Zoom the community in, but it happened twice all semester. And so, anyways, it happened this past Friday, and there were three students. One of them was a varsity football player. What do they call it? Running. I don't know. One of those real fast guys who plays football. Help me out, my American friends. I'm a hockey player. So anyway, one of those like a super fast running back. Is it? I'm wait, somebody's gonna put it. Running back. You got it, Elizabeth. Yeah. And then also the other guy played varsity football and varsity baseball. And so this guy was like massive, and they're great guys. And then there was a really nice little beautiful soul from India who was becoming a medical doctor. So here I got these like super athletes, and then this little beautiful soul from India becoming a doctor. And so, quickly racing in my mind is like, well, what do I do? What do I teach? Do I give them the hero's journey? What do they look
Because
like?
of their different body types, you were wondering like, what am I gonna do this group
Yeah.
that is not so homogenous, or is that what you mean?
Yeah, and more like wanting to present yoga in a way that would feel right for them. Because I'm thinking the athletes probably want to like stretch out their tight muscles, and perhaps the boy from India, be looking for some a little bit more authentic, some of those types of practices. So anyways, the main thing is having fun. And so I, got us, let's sit down in a circle of four, share our name, where you're from, what brought you here. We got to know each other, right? And that's yoga. That's what I love to do.
That's the Happy Jack yoga, your style. That's what you do with every single student of yours.
Yeah. And then
You
and then
always
I
gravitate towards fun, sharing, connection,
yeah.
circle.
And then, yeah, even if it's a circle of four. But then you just get to know each other. And I get more present myself as a teacher. And in a way though, it like created more, I don't want to say distance, but more difference in, stage of life we are. So this one, massive football varsity guy, he's part of a fraternity. For those not in the US, it's basically, a club of, yeah, people come together, a lot of partying. And so he's telling us, when I said like, hey, what's something you'd love to let go of? And this guy's like, well, oh man, this weekend at our frat house, we had a party, and the cops came, and so like so I'm thinking, oh yeah, I was in your shoes 15 years ago, 20 years ago. And so at that moment I thought like, okay, how do I connect with him? So in one way I shared some of my stories of like, hey, I get it, I did all that stuff, but at the same time I shared some of my stories around sobriety, and how this is, how yoga has led me to this, and how it's helped me, not trying to convert them, not trying to change them, but really just planting seeds, right? These 21-year-old kids planting seeds, and you just never know when that gets sparked. But anyways, we had a blast with the guys from MIT, and I guess it's just kind of a reminder when we go in to teach a yoga class, is because we have a lot of yoga teachers here in this community and listening to the podcast. I invite you to really trust your instinct, and do it as natural for you. Because for a moment I was gonna like start asking them like, hey, what do you what do you want? And then trying to like teach poses that they want. And that could be okay. And there's nothing wrong with that. But I feel like when I just in the class just did what I love to do, they walked away and shared like, hey, I asked everybody to share, where do you feel? And it was gratitude and connections, like all the stuff that I wanted to create, we achieved.
I love that. I was in a training this weekend, and the psychotherapist who was leading it, he said that, I don't know if this is like same maybe for yoga teachers. I think it might be like, he was saying the clients that you will see, they will present with things that you, the therapist, will need to work on. So maybe the students who come to our classes, like they are teaching us something and they are bringing some inquiry to us as well. Do you know, like when I was saying earlier, like what life presents and what falls into our lap without our own kind of seeking for it? Like you did not know who is coming to that class and what they were going to share and what the learning for you and for them is, only time will show. Like you're planting seeds because maybe one day they will need some of that options. Like yoga often is an option out of the normal grind for a lot of people, right? So
Yeah.
it's kind of fascinating. The people that come to our class, they might um, bring topics to us that we get to then also be an inquiry around.
Yeah, that's right. It's our students that can be our greatest teachers.
Yeah.
And if we go in with that mindset, that it really helps. And I was really encouraged. I was surprised that these young boys, they, if I had just looked at them and they had like their varsity MIT gear on, I might have assumed, oh, they want this or they want the physical practice. But as we got to know each other, they were sharing things like, oh my God, my, holding their head, my brain is, because it's the finals time and they're stressed. And so they want a calm mind and they want to feel more present. And so it's just nice to be able to hear those kinds of shares. And actually, I just thought of it, Elizabeth, great, put in there running back. I just thought of, I think it was wide receiver actually. And I don't know what those positions do, but I think it was wide receiver was what that fast guy was, if that makes sense. Um, One last announcement before we dive into things, something super excited about. And we got to send so much love and congrats to our friend Wandering Alice over in the UK. I got a beautiful newsletter this past week and learning about Slow into the Seasons, an amazing new podcast that's coming out in the new year. And I just wanted to congratulate you. And I listened to the first intro episode and I attempted to leave a rating. Somehow I think the same happened with us, where you might have to have like a couple of episodes and kind of demonstrate that you've listened to them before you can leave a rating. Because I listened to your intro twice and I'm like, I want to leave a 5-star review. But it didn't let me yet. But as soon as that episode 2 comes out, we're gonna get you some ratings as well. But just huge congrats. I just
Can you
love,
share the name again of the
yeah,
podcast?
slow into the seasons.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Yes.
we'll listen.
So that's the coolest thing, is that like when seeing members of the community creating different ways to share, whether it's Elizabeth's book, whether it's Alice's podcast, whether it's Saga's yoga studios, and on and on. Our friend Katie, is she on right now? She's not on right now, but she just like announced she's going all in with yoga, and she declared to the universe, she put it out into the universe and into social media, like, I'm quitting my work, I'm going all in yoga. Within 24 hours, she gets a private message asking for a private yoga class, for some mom's birthday. And it's just like, when we put it out there, it all comes together. Finally, I'm just going to say, I'm not sure. You guys let me know if it's ever working. I don't think you'll ever notice, but yesterday I had therapy session number 3. So we're making progress. Thanks for the celebration, Yada. It's amazing. It's so cool. Like, oh my goodness. You're gonna say I told you so, Hannah, but like, where have you been all my life? Therapy? It's not like Yara's like, come on, yeah. There's something about, and it's not about fixing, as you know, like that you're like right into this, Hannah. But there's just something about being able to have that confidential conversation and express myself. And I feel like it never goes in the direction that I expect it to, but just being able to start, and it just feels good after. It feels amazing after. And probably with time, like perhaps issues can get resolved, but like it's not about that right now for me. It's just about expression and conversation in a, different than a podcast or a friendship. There's just, yeah, it's more intimate, or it's more private, I guess.
Yeah, I love that. And it's almost like a therapist will never tell you what to do or what to think. but there's like that space to have really, really meaningful conversations where you learn more about yourself by or in the presence of that person. Like I learn a lot about like how to be a therapist, what to say and what not to say. And most of the things we're encouraged not to say. Like completely holding a neutral space will give you the opportunity to discover it for yourself. And when that comes from within you, it has a bigger impact than if someone else showed you like, how about this and how about that? Like it's incredible what can happen in therapy. It's beautiful. I'm so happy you found someone that you feel that like when you come out of that conversation and you feel lit up and inspired, and that like those are the conversations I never want to end. Like that's why I study therapy, because I want to be in that conversation from now till eternity. It is so powerful and fascinating and deep and uplifting. So I'm really happy that you have access to that as well.
Yeah, no, it's so good. And just on that, I got just a quick shout out to you, Hanna, because you are in training right now, psychotherapy with the yoga, and you are working with some clients. So if anybody out there is looking to work with a therapist one-on-one or in training, because you're doing some practice, you know, in order to earn your designation, reach out to us, info@happyjackyoga.com.
Yeah,
And
I could handle a few more, probably not many, but a few more.
nice.
Mm-hmm.
Yada says she's very interested. Yeah, shoot us an email, Yada. We'll
Mm-hmm.
get you connected with the details. It's definitely very, very, it's less than half the price of what I'm paying. So you're doing it at a very discounted rate, right, as you're training. So amazing. Well, let's jump into, we like really riffed for a while on some of those opening topics, which I thought would happen. But let's jump into the myth. I think we can sneak in a myth here before we get to the hot seat.
Yeah. Do you want to read the actual myth and then I'll share some thoughts, or
Yeah, we
your
can do that
feeling?
this time. Yeah, so I'll read the myth because you found a great quote, which I love. So here's the myth. Yoga is a religious Hindu practice, or yoga is the same as practicing Hinduism. That's the myth.
Yeah, I think this is a really good myth to discuss, because most of us don't live in a Hindu context. So sometimes that question could, you know, rise for someone who maybe belongs to a different tradition. But what we found, so the question is like, is it okay to practice yoga if you're not Hindu? And looking into this and doing some research, something that we found really interesting was what Sadhguru said. He's a huge persona within yoga, and he says this: yoga is Hindu just the way gravity is Christian. Just because the law of gravity was pronounced or propounded by Newton, who lived in a Christian culture, does it make gravity Christian? So Sadhguru says yoga is a technology. Anybody who is willing to make use of it can make use of it. So I thought that was really powerful. And then he goes on saying, like, why the yogic sciences have often been labeled as Hindu by a few people is because this science and technology grew and prospered in this culture. So naturally, it has gotten associated with the Hindu way of life. But really, the word Hindu comes from the word Sindhu, which is a river. And because this culture grew from the banks of this river, the culture has been labeled as Hindu. But Hindu is not an ism. It's not a religion. It's a geographical and cultural identity. So I thought that was a really good perspective when we think about yoga. Like it can be applied within any spiritual or religious context, right?
Yeah, and that's something we're talking about a lot in our course here this semester at Harvard Divinity School. And I like what you said right at the end there about being applied in any spiritual or religious context. You know, I looked up a definition of spirituality and religion just before this. And so one perspective is that spirituality involves a personal quest for meaning in life, which I really like. I feel like I'm on that path. I'm on this personal quest for meaning of life, while religion involves an organized entity with rituals and practices focusing on a higher power. And when I hear that, I'm like, oh, that's me also. So I'm like, I'm like in a way both like spiritual and religious, and yoga can fit into both of those contexts. It can fit into spirituality. It can fit into religion. And I must say, yesterday we had our last class for the Krishna and Christ course here at school. And we all went around the room and had a chance to share, the impact that it's had and what we learned and what questions we're left with. But I was so encouraged from our professor, so Professor Francis Clooney, who has such expertise in both sides. He's been a Jesuit priest for more than 50 years, so like over half a century he's been a priest in Christianity, and for the same amount of time, for over half a century, he has been a scholar in Hinduism. PhD, lived in India, and spent half a century studying it. So he's so expertise in both.
And we'd like to have him join the upcoming course in one way or another. So that would be really exciting if you guys got to meet him as well.
Yeah, we're gonna make you challenge that right before this we hit record today, and let's make it happen. I mean, yes. I'm sure he would be happy to. So we're gonna get him to join because, like you say, in January we're having the Krishna and Christ course at Happy Jack Yoga University, where we'll really get to explore this. But what I was saying there was that I was so encouraged by is that this guy who's in a way personally very committed to Christianity because that's like what he teaches, but he's very intellectual in Hinduism and yoga. And he said, and he agrees, like there's way more similarities, way more commonality. And of course, though, it's always a personal decision, right? Of like what a person practices, what they believe. But I think it's important for us growing up in this culture, in this part of the world, to be aware of both. So I think we kind of unanimously, it is a myth that, and we absolutely can practice yoga. It's a technology, it's a practice, and it means union. It means connection. Like sitting in a circle with a couple of varsity football players and a medical doctor from India and talking about what we're grateful for. That was a yoga experience. That was a yoga class. So yes, we can practice it.
Yeah, and I love that it's like inclusive. Like there's something arrogant I find in practicing any tradition when it becomes exclusive of other people's beliefs. So that's what I love about most of the spiritual teachers that resonate with me, and this practice itself and the technology that yoga is inclusive.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, that's so good. It feels like just a few years ago, I did it all the time, would say like, oh, exclusive. We created this exclusive mastermind. Like even just 5 years ago, it was all about VIP exclusive. And now I love how the world has changed. I mean, I guess it hasn't changed, but I've woken up anyways. It's like, no, it's about inclusion. Mm-hmm. How can we make it more inclusive? So I like that distinction. Mm-hmm. I think what we ought to do, we have a really sweet main topic, but I suggest we bump that for next week because we're going to talk the business of yoga. And that's just such a big conversation and opportunity for our yoga teachers and yoga community, those who want to grow their sharing. I think we got to dive right into the hot seat. We got a little bit of time left. Hanna is on the hot seat, and we got a few questions. So let's just kind of start out easy, start out light, get ourselves into our heart space. And question number 1, Hanna, what is your happiest memory of us?
Of Happy Jack Yoga, or you and me personally?
Of us, you and I personally.
Oh, it's so hard to answer quickly on the spot. Well, I remember sharing on Anna Kuusela's podcast called Good Vibes Only, and I cried because it was like an ordinary moment that had happened close to that time where you said that you would help me, like whether it was doing the laundry or something like that. It was an ordinary moment where I felt that you really saw that how to help me. I felt really seen. So those moments, the happiest moments with you for me are the ones where I feel that you're tuning in and really asking me, how can I be there for you? Is that
Mm.
specific enough an answer? Like, you know, those moments where I start to cry because I I kind of feel a bit lonely in the world. And then when you hit the sweet spot of asking me like, hi, I can see that this is hard for you. How can I be there? And even saying that makes me emotional now.
Mm.
Yeah,
Yeah, no, I totally get that. And it's good for me to hear and maybe good for others to hear. Cause sometimes, at least for me, I think it's like the big things like, oh, I gotta make this big accomplishment or that. And it's actually not, it's the little things like feeling seen and feel. I know a big thing that you've really wanted is like you want to feel safe and you want to feel trust. And those kind of things are earned through, through presence and through the little things, helping in the little way.
and
So that.
sometimes it happens spontaneously with some people where I just automatically feel safe, like was the case with my first husband. Like just his presence all throughout that relationship, I felt like he held me.
Mhm.
And I don't take that for granted. I guess that's why it makes me really emotional.
Mhm.
I really appreciate it.
Do I read into that? You didn't feel immediately safe with me. I'm teasing because I know we were totally different dynamic, living in different parts of the world.
That's true, but you found your way there. So with some training.
Yeah, I'm a little slower learner. Nice, good one. Okay, how about this one? What do you want or wish most for your kids?
I want and wish most for them to have beautiful, deep life experiences where they feel that they are living something that expands them. I don't know that it's a desire of theirs, but like if they could have the sense of meaning, like if they get to do what they love doing, even if it would be difficult, even if it's risky, I would want them to have like the magical wonder of life, falling in love madly, loving their work madly. That's what I want for them.
And I see that there's where you're in integrity because what you're saying and what you've done
Is
is
what
in
I'm
alignment.
doing.
No, it's in alignment, right? Like because like your kids are both studying music right now, which is beautiful. Their number one passion is music, and they're off at university studying music. And even though, we've had conversations and anybody could kind of think of like, well, there's maybe less career options down that path than, engineering or doctor or lawyer or whatever trades. But the fact that you 100% support them, especially at that stage of life, like they're just growing up, like do the thing that you love. That's pretty cool. I didn't have that to the same extent. I mean, my parents did a great job, but they, kind of somehow steered me towards engineering, which no regrets, but there was more of a little bit of an agenda, a little bit of, wanting security and safety. And you're just like holding the space to do what your kids love.
Yeah. And when I talk about safety, like in the previous question, it's not that type of safety that like your parents might mean when they, want you to have a safe future. The safety that I talk about is on a different, deeper level, I think, where there's so much safety that I can trust and be fully who I am. And with all the vulnerabilities and being completely open and wild and creative. And that was like just to keep like these things to be clear about what I meant with that safety. And for my kids, I don't know. I feel like they are quite safe in the world because of, I don't know, I think through our union, they are quite grounded and quite like able to do what they want pretty much in terms of like aspirations. Like they have the courage to go into the world. But like, to answer again your question about what I want for them is to live fully and really savor the magic that comes with being a human being, and the opportunities, like not to hold back when, when beautiful things happen, or difficult things as well. It doesn't matter. You know what I mean?
Yeah, no, I think, and it's really good to think about. Just recently on our Sunday satsang call with the community, we were talking about that, because there's many of our community members are parents and raising children, and it's in one way, sometimes wanting something so badly for your children, and at the same time kind of letting go of that and holding space. So very, very nicely said. And let's see, so we got one more here which we can riff on for a while. What are the best and worst? What are the best and worst parts about getting older?
Best, I think that for me, it feels like the best parts are that there's more freedom. I feel more at home in my body and in my spirituality and in my personality, in my passions. I feel like I'm freer to express them. Um, and that's beautiful. So that means that there's not a lot of like, how can I say, like, no faking or no wanting to come across a certain way. Like, let's get straight to the point in life. I love that about being older. That, I guess, it comes like confidence and self-esteem, but also vulnerability, not to be afraid of any of those aspects in myself, and to be able to express that, have less doubt comes with aging, just more options, more life, like freer. I feel so free in that way now. And I might not have felt that way when I was 20 or 30 or even 40. So that's, I think, is beautiful with aging. And what's beautiful with aging also is seeing my loved ones. Like, there's a vulnerability that comes that I adore, like seeing somebody's wrinkles, or that they're not as bendy. I love that. It makes me love them more.
Yeah.
I think it's beautiful, and something that isn't celebrated and talked a lot about, but it makes me like that. So that's beautiful. And what was the question? What was hard about aging?
Yeah, and I mean, I'll just say on that too, like I think that's, if this is what you when anytime we have talked about aging, like this is something that you do appreciate, you do love, and it's like, so the next part of the question is like, well, what are the worst parts about aging? But I think that the overall, right, and I'm agreeing as well, like it's, even though my body is changing and it's slow, I hate to admit, slowing down a little bit stiffer, but I love it. It's like, it's really cool. So our friend Yada and all the other youngins out there, you got lots of goodness to look forward to.
Yeah, I admire that when I see someone age. I admire my kids when they turn into whatever age they are. I admire the people that fascinate me for how they are and how they've become there. I think it's deep and fascinating. Yeah. The worst parts maybe is if it affects self-esteem. Like, there's been moments where I wonder, like, am I still okay? Like, am I still a woman? Am I what? Like, that could be hard to navigate. And then also,
what do you mean, are you still a woman? Of course you're still a woman. What do you
yeah,
mean?
well, as a woman, we're also subject to a lot of, I think, culturally and internally criticism and that. And then the other worst part of aging is when people die, because my in-laws have died, and I think that it would be nice if they hadn't. So that kind of hurts me to think about that. they aren't sitting in Norway waiting for us to come this Christmas.
Yeah.
So that's an aspect I don't really love about aging. Although, like my mother-in-law, I did want her to not have to live in a body that was so dysfunctional, I guess, at the end. But I really miss the people who aged and went to the
Yeah.
wherever you go when you die.
Well, and that's the really beautiful thing that at least I love now about what yoga can be, right? Because yoga can be so much, and there's so many different paths and traditions and beliefs, and the fact that we get to be an inquiry around what happens. Like, well, first of all, what is the point of life? You know, what am I? Who am I? And what's going to happen at the end of this life, whenever that is. Hopefully, a long time for all of us, and to think about that. And I feel like and I haven't lost my parents yet. I can't wait to see them later this week, right? At some point they will, of course, be gone. And I feel like this yoga and this philosophy and this practice is preparing me. And I'm sure we can never be prepared fully. We never can be as humans, but it somehow it brings more meaning and more understanding. And yeah, I suspect, that you are, with aging, you are in a better place, having lost both of your in-laws within the past couple of years. Not that it was ever easy, but like probably the work that you have done in some way has eased that, or given you a different lens, a different perspective to navigate it.
Yeah, even if I feel a little bit of like an orphan, like if they were a set of parents for me, I feel like I've lost them. But
Mhm.
but yeah, I don't know. Like like grief is like the way we love when the person is no longer here, right?
Yeah. Yeah, speaking of which, we just have a moment left here, but we should do a shout out next week. Next week, December 11 through 15, is the Yoga for Grief course, live at Happy Jack Yoga. And Ohana, you've been putting all of everything into it because you're driving to Boston to get me tomorrow. So you're definitely making progress. It's ready to rock. And it's going to be really important and really special to empower yoga teachers and yogis to navigate that inevitable journey that we will go through. And
Yeah.
so with that, this has been fun. Lots of great conversations. I'm excited. We got a number of yogis who are still on the line. Love to get your feedback after on the podcast. And for those who are listening on Spotify and Apple and Google, if you have feedback, send us an email at info@happyjackyoga.com. Let us know what's working. Let us know what's not working. Let us know if you have suggestions or ideas or questions.
Or if you have a myth that you want us to discuss.
If you got a yoga myth, if you want therapy from Hanna, if you want to join us in the Zoom room, if you want to join us for live yoga, any and all of the above, send us an email, info@happyjackyoga.com, and we'll get you the details. And again, those who support us on Patreon, we really appreciate it. It's a community supported podcast. Price of a coffee per month, and we get to keep this ship sailing. But with that, my friends, make it an amazing rest of the day, and we will see you next week. Namaste.
Namaste. Thanks for being here.
Nice one.